My name is Dayana Hudson. I am a senior studying computer science at George Mason University.
Hi, my name is Temi Adegboye. I'm a graduate student in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Howard University, Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Brian Moran, the founder of Boolean Girl. We work with girls in grades 3 through 8 to inspire them in engineering and software development.
Hi, I'm Brittany Greer. I'm the president and founder of a nonprofit focused on girls aged 4 to 14 in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math called Rosie, Riveters. Please join us in conversation.
You know, in the 1980s, it was something around 30 to 40% of the population women graduating with STEM degrees, and it's now in computer science down to 12%. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Computer science, at least the way that it's packaged before you're kind of in these collaborative spaces, is that it's very kind of a narrow workspace, that you're kind of, you know, at a computer. The image that so many people have, and it is changing with, you know, the generations that we're working with, is this kind of, you know, Zuckerberg in his hoodie over a computer coding away. And for some that might be engaging, but kind of for the wider female demographic in terms of what's of interest, that appeal point or that image is not necessarily something that they're jumping onto or just want to be a part of.
I mean, to me, I think the problem there is that's a stereotype,
Completely,
right? So
right.
I run, in addition to doing Boolean Girl, I run, you know, software development teams. And nobody in software development is talking anymore about putting an individual in the corner and having them code or in the basement. It's all about teamwork, it's all about communication. You want software developers that can talk to customers, you want people that can go out, and you see this in the other engineering fields too, right? It's not about locking yourself in a corner, it's about getting out and engaging with teammates, customers, you know, the rest of the world.
Right.
And that stereotype.
Yeah. The girls that I've worked with this summer have been very, very excited to see all of these data scientists and all of these spaces where people are very creative. They can really express themselves, and they're not bound by this cubicle that they have to slave over constantly, every single day. So they see all this creativity that's going on, and they see that they can really be creative with the computer. They can really express themselves while helping the community. So.
Right, that's the key thing. Mm-hmm. It's not, you know, writing code is one thing, but being creative is a much more valuable skill.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, I would also say developing problem-solving skills and actually analytical skills are something we really need to also emphasize in our young girls. Ultimately, a lot of our young girls just feel the old science and engineering is just about coding or software or applications. However, there's a whole lot of engineering disciplines out there. There's a mechanical engineering. I'm personally in the environmental engineering field. I have a background in chemical, so I came up from chemical and then decided at some point I wanted to go into civil, and now I'm like, oh, I think I prefer the environmental. So the main focus is being able to, you know, see a problem and try to solve it, try to analyze how can we best resolve this problem. So even you could, you know, have like collaboration with even software engineers where we work together. So be able to work together as a team, like you rightly said, developing the right skill set that would, you know, take them forward even in the workplace, that would keep them being able to connect with clients and be able to, you know, communicate. All the skill sets are very vital. So I think those are some of the things that will help keep our females in the STEM field.
So when I talk to girls, a lot of times they don't realize that. So how do we get that message to the girls?
Yeah,
how do we get them to realize that it's about problem solving, creativity, things that are fun to do,
Yeah.
right?
How do you change the stereotype,
Yep.
you know, in terms
Yeah.
of what you're combating? I think that there's multiple avenues to do that. There's you know, things that are talked about frequently in the STEM space in those fields. Rosie Riveters works with kind of the youngest demographic that's going to come in we start with 4-year-olds, right? Like, so the first time that they can ever sit in a classroom and follow instruction, they're kind of in our space. And you know, it sounds almost like it sounds almost that it's not as important in kind of the grand scheme of what everything else that we're doing, but our branding is really significant to the way that we're trying to pull people in. You know, our branding is engaging, it's inviting, it's something that, you know, when you see it, you want to know more about it, and you want to kind of, it gets you kind of in the door to want to be a part of it. We also work in kind of trying to create that kind of unity space when they're in environments so that they're learning to work together. So, I mean, for the girls in our program, they put on a red headscarf on their hair, and it's that kind of unified team environment so that you're getting them young and starting to change the narrative before the narrative is inflicted upon them.
Yep.
Whether that's through a nonprofit space, whether that's through the school system, whether that's through a for-profit after-school program, really starting to change that narrative on a mass scale, I think is really important to kind of, as you start to plug those holes in the pipeline overall. And the conversation about confidence, the conversation about, you know, sometimes these things are going to go wrong, sometimes you're going to get them wrong. I mean, I even see it with my 2-year-old when she's trying to do puzzles at home. And not to say that it's only a girl thing, but it's certainly something that's present in the kind of female space of the not wanting to get stuff wrong, where she, you know, doesn't get the puzzle piece in the right way and tries it 3 times and doesn't want to do it anymore because she feels like she can't complete the task. Really building up the fact that getting it wrong, you're eventually going to get it right. And either you're going to get it right and love it, or you're going to get it right and say, you know what, maybe this isn't what I want to do. Maybe I don't want to be a chemical engineer. Maybe I want to go into the coding space, but I tried all those things. And by knowing that getting it wrong and getting knocked down is not a bad thing, but a good opportunity, I think is critical in terms of adding into that narrative as well.
We've been really trying to address that this summer at Girls Who Code. So we've seen a lot of our students try to learn these coding concepts and become frustrated that they don't immediately get it. And these are great students. You know, they're used to getting very good grades, being used to getting everything very quickly. So we're telling them it's okay to make mistakes. It's almost guaranteed that you will pretty much every time. One thing that we've been telling them a lot is that a lot of the times you'll have to build something just to learn how to build it and then build it for real. And they're starting to wrap their minds around it, but it's interesting how they've really adopted this narrative from a very young age. So that's really important that we're talking about it.
Completely, and the only way to do it is for them to do it in practice, for them to get it wrong and then see how they can almost get it right, and to constantly, I think, kind of address the narrative around it, address the fact that this is something that you're going to, I mean, you're learning, when you're coding, for instance, if you want to just take that in isolation, you're learning an entirely new language.
Right.
Like, it's not an easy checkbox process. It is something that that you can jump into and absolutely learn and gain the skill set of, and, have different levels of mastery based on your kind of understanding of the concept. But, I think that the conversation too of, STEM isn't just easy. Like, you do have to work for it, and that's not a bad thing, and hard work isn't a bad thing. And kind of adding into those skill sets, I think, is a huge part of kind of building up the confidence that you have the ability to work hard and get it wrong with that youngest demographic. At least that's kind of our core focus as well, is get them to the point that when you're losing them in that pipeline space.
Right, but I don't really see girls giving up because it's hard. That's not where I mean, in the classes we have, girls come in, especially in our advanced classes, they come in and struggle, and I think they appreciate it more for the struggle. They when they're finished, they've achieved something, and it wasn't easy.
So I agree.
I don't know. Are you seeing that in the? I mean, what age are the girls that you're seeing in Girls Who Code? Is it high schoolers or? Yeah,
rising juniors and seniors in high school, so 15 through 17 roughly. And I have seen that perseverance, but there's definitely that initial frustration, almost I need to get this right, and why am I not getting this right? There must be something wrong with the way that I'm thinking. So it's just getting over that initial bump. I don't think that it's necessarily the case that they're falling through because of it, although that might be the case in some situations.
And I guess maybe what you're saying is you have to push them through that hump.
Completely.
You got to push them through that hump so they understand it's okay to fail. I mean, how many times have you built something and failing you learned more than...
Yeah, I'm also coming with that, appreciating the fact that you were able to achieve something, and the reward, the fulfillment keeps them even to do some higher task. I mean, when you fail and you try it some other time and then you eventually get it, then I could do something even bigger. Completely. So it creates in you a confidence, like you rightly said, that you could, look onto greater tasks and be able to get positive results out of it. So sometimes it just depends on how we see it. even failing, sometimes they try to do a code, they're not getting it right, oh, I'm frustrated. But when they get that little push from their mentors or supporters or teachers, kind of pushes them forward. And then when they know, oh, it's not a bad thing to fail, it's when you don't go ahead that you actually say you failed. Or when you go ahead to take another step and you eventually solve it, the rewarding experience is very much more fulfilling in the final take.
That space
Right.
for like positive failure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And giving them that space to have that. And absolutely, by the end of it, when they're given that they're given that kind of that opportunity to get it wrong or to have that difficulty, they absolutely persevere. It's not a question of the fact that that ability is not in them. It 100% is in them. I don't think that it's necessarily, I don't know that it has traditionally been nurtured and developed in girls to do that. I think that there's definitely more things that are happening to do that, but I think that it's critical to give them that space to fail safe and
Right.
learn so that they can understand that they can do it again.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's another interesting point, this idea of fail safe, right? So one of the common things in the program that you work in and that you run and that I run is that it's girls only, I mean,
Absolutely.
how important do you guys think that is?
I think it's great. We've had a lot of bonding activities, and the instructors have said that they definitely could not do that if it was a mixed classroom or if it was a boys-only classroom. We do a lot of bonding activities to get them to trust each other, to realize that everyone has great potential, that they're all friends, that they're all trying to essentially get this great product to work. So right now we're working on final projects, and it's wonderful to see them have that realization that their product is finally working, that it could potentially be deployed at some point if they had more time to work on it. So they've definitely come across a lot of hurdles, and I've noticed that whenever the girls are put into the space where they can be pushed by their mentors, then they do a lot better. I'm just a little bit more concerned about the girls that never get into the space in the
Right.
first place, because then they would be more likely to fall behind, either if it's because they haven't been pushed or because they don't want to essentially potentially fail.
Because I get a lot, so we teach in the schools, and so we're usually sponsored by the PTAs at the school. And I'm constantly would be too much, but I'm frequently asked by the PTAs, why girls only? Won't you come teach a class for boys? And there's lots of resources out there to teach classes to boys. And we're not against boys. In fact, we've taught some boys, all boys classes, which is a different
You're the father of
experience.
boys, aren't you?
Yeah, I have 2 boys, and I am a boy, so I'm not against boys. But we do find that it's a totally different experience having a class of just girls. They interact differently, they're more boisterous, they're, good things, They yell and scream when they get something, it's cool when they achieve something they've been struggling with, they'll stand up and be like, and all the other girls will come over like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
And so that's a cool experience that I think would be different if the classes were mixed.
So we are an organization whose mission is focused on girls. We do not exclude boys from participating in our programs. So the girls are always in the majority in our classrooms.
Oh, that helps.
Now, the personal anecdotes directly from participants was that they loved the fact that they were either only girls in the classroom or that they were mainly girls. And that they had never really experienced that before. And I had boys, for instance, even come into our Saturday program, and I had a little boy outside crying because he didn't want to go in because he was the only boy. And the conversation to even have that with a boy and say, girls feel like this.
Right.
This is what they're experiencing when they're going into these all-male classrooms. And that, the conversation I had with him is, you coming in is a brave thing to do, and that you can educate yourself in everything that's happening here. And so when we've had 1 to 2 boys in a class of 12, or completely girls, and that experience for them has been, they come in and they're hesitant at first, and then by the end of it, they're loving it, and they're walking out fully cognizant of the issue that's presented that they might not otherwise really experience until they go into a field and they're recruiting and there's no girls on their team and they want girls on their team.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that having a majority girl classroom is critical, but I don't know that having, for us at least, having some boys hasn't been a negative, if that makes sense.
If we look at the kind of stereotypes in the society, a lot of homes and a lot of families do not always encourage girls, and they tend to always assume, oh, the math and then the sciences are just a boy thing, just leave it for the boy. So we need to try as mentors, as teachers, to really, go over with our friends, whoever, whatever child you have around you, let them really understand that it's not just a boy thing. A girl could be in the science world and do even as good as a guy, as good, and you could be on the same thing working together. So the stereotypes and then the notion that it's just about the boys, I think it's one thing that really detaches the girls from furthering in science and math. Like recently, I was in a class where I met this junior in high school, and to me, I thought she would probably be in the science class, and she said, I'd rather do psychology. I don't get to do the math thing because I feel it's so much of a boy thing. And I was trying to explain to her that I've noticed you in a couple of weeks, and I feel you'll do excellently with your math. All you're assuming is what you've heard. So if you try to take that out from your mindset and just feel I can do this, so it's not something that you cannot do, but because you've heard so much about it that it's a boy thing, and then you get detached, and you don't want to try even to see if you could actually get yourself good at it. So I think we could also try to focus on how the stereotypes and the notion how they kind of impact our young girls.
No, I think you're exactly right, and it's one of the reasons I think that both of our programs focus on girls that are so young. I mean, 4 years old, and we start at third graders, which is 8. And the idea is to get to kids before they have these notions imprinted in their brains, like, oh, this is a boy thing. I'm not going to when I get to high school, I'm not going to even bother to take a computer science class. I mean, how silly is that, And it's worse when it's reinforced by society. Yeah. But, it's, to me, it's bothersome when a girl progresses and somewhere in middle school starts making those assumptions and doesn't even try. And it's not that not try, doesn't even bother to kind of experiment with different STEM disciplines to see if she really likes them. It's like, no, that's a boy thing. I'm going to go into something. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I think there's also an empowerment of parents conversation as well. And so not to say that there needs to be there's a lot of parents who are completely unrelated to the STEM field in any way, shape, or form. And there's an intimidation factor about how do I support my child down this path? If they're coding and I have no 2 cents about coding, so am I able to, and they have a question. So part of the beauty of it is, going out and figuring out yourself. But there is certainly an impact in terms of we did a lot of work with mentors with the Rosie's program, and most of the women who were, I would say, the majority of women who had kind of entered these fields had somebody in a STEM field who sparked where they were going. It's not that they wanted in the same STEM field, but STEM was on the table of a conversation, or a mentor was available to them. There's a whole kind of separate mentor conversation we could dive into. But really saying and that comes from the moms who code groups, or the opportunities to kind of come in and say, so this is generally what we're talking about, and here's the ways that you can support your kids, whether it's putting them in an after-school program, or here's resources online that they can get involved in, and if they've or having the continual resources available through your own program, to say they really liked this, here's how they continue it along the way, because I think that there's just the stereotypes exist. It's helping to break the narrative even beyond our classrooms and into the homes themselves in terms of, and I think it's an empowerment conversation, that to have the confidence themselves to support that journey, as opposed to
It's interesting because
off.
So the DC metro area is different than
Absolutely.
almost anywhere else, right? A lot of people in STEM, a lot of really brilliant parents and things like that. So it's a little easier here. But I get a lot of, especially moms that come into the class, picking up their daughter and say things like, I'd really like to take this class myself, so I could learn just a little bit of coding, and it's for the same reason. It's because they're not concerned, but they'd like to be able to, when their daughter goes home, help her. Because the kids, they leave the class, and I'm sure it's the same. They leave the class and they want to continue to do this kind of work. They want to, they've gotten enough, they've gotten the spark, and they get started. And I have moms and dads that come to me that's just like, nothing. How do we, how do we do this at home? And it's like, and so one of the things we do is we say, go to the website. We've got easy to follow instructions. Anybody can follow these instructions. They're designed for a third grader. I'm sure with your, your PhD in astrophysics, you can figure this out.
Exactly. I mean, when our parents dropped their kids off for the first day of our pilot program, we gave them all kind of a one-page letter that had resources on it.
Oh,
so
that's
similar.
a great idea.
Here's websites you can go to, and then we also had questions after each of our projects that the kids walked away with to talk about what they did at home. So,
That's a great
ask
way to
your
get
kids
into the
to
home
explain,
and address just what you were
Exactly.
talking
yeah,
about.
how does
That's a great
hydraulics
way.
work? And
That
then it's
is
also
cool.
that
Yeah.
learning through teaching again. You're cementing the concept, you're cementing the understanding, because they're going to have to talk about it to somebody who doesn't
Right.
know what they did. And so that's one way that we've found that we can that parents really responded positively to.
Sure.
In terms of kind of adding that empowerment factor to the conversation, to get into the
Yeah.
homes and help. It's there's so many points where this process is there's leaks in the pipeline, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
like so plugging as many as we can
Yeah.
so that we can get that that stream going uphill. I think is critical, but it takes a village, really. You know what I
Right.
mean, we need kind of the schools working with the after school programs and the nonprofit space, and there's how does that kind of lend itself, and really kind of working on those collaborative efforts. I mean, the interesting thing is we all talk about kind of that younger age aspect. Only a fifth of federal funding goes into anything below the undergraduate level in the STEM space. So, and I think like half of STEM jobs don't need a degree. Oddly enough, like there's been, if you're not getting them young, maybe they're not going down a college route, but they are kind of going in that more specialized, maybe they're not getting a degree in computer science, but they're getting they're coding.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're getting that space. Or they're going into a mechanical engineering route where they're starting at a low level place at a power plant. They're working their way up. So even having the exposure to those points, which I think the lab in here is looking to do as well, is say what are the careers you're even looking at? Because most kids have no idea, because they're not the ones that necessarily probably the biggest thing that we talk about as a STEM person is you can see the doctor in a lab coat, right? At least that's the biggest image. But even to this day, you ask a kid to draw a scientist and they draw a boy. So
Sure.
creating the kind of diverse conversation point of here's what you can do, and here's how we kind of start to fill that gap as early as possible, I think is critical.
Yep.
And the focus very much is still on that middle school up space, because that's when the drop happens, which makes
Yep.
sense. You look at the
Absolutely.
focus and they lose them at middle school, and it's like, well, what is happening before middle
Right.
school that we can help?
But that's why that continuum
Build
is
that.
important, right?
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
mean, I always, like we participate in some programs that are just kind of these one-time big hits, right? But we're much more focused on, come and take a class or an after school, and then there's a next step. There's a beginning class, there's an advanced class, there's a transition into electronics, there's a transition into more advanced coding like Python and things like that, so that there's a continuum that they can start in 3rd or 4th grade, and that we kind of keep them going through 8th grade. And in Arlington, at least, high school is where you can take your first coding classes. Although this year there are some middle schools that are going to have a coding class.
Yeah, and if you get into that middle school, great. Like it's just,
Right.
are you getting into that? And that's why I think that
Right.
the collaboration effort is so important in so many ways. And the White House, I think 2 months ago now, did the first kind of State of Women Summit, which was great in a lot of ways, but I would love to see something coming from that level in terms of getting these groups to collaborate.
Yeah.
So so I work in 4 to 14, and you work in middle, and you work in high school. How are we moving them through from
Right.
program to program and creating that fully comprehensive supportive network?
Right.
And then they get into the high school, and are we working as a group to get them exposure to a college prep conversation, and what
Right.
does that look like? And I think that that's where there's real potential for kind of growth and value in the space that hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
Is to say, how are we all working together to make this conversation kind of come to a really productive endpoint?
Right.
Easier said than done, but
Right.
Yeah,
Not
just to
impossible.
buttress that as well as when we have the partnership between the societies, the government funding, and all of that, we should also look at the industrial companies, like what fields are open to these young girls. Most of the times when you ask, as an engineer, what do you think? They probably say mechanical engineer. A lot of people don't even think, an environmental engineer could, treat our water, treat the wastewater, make it clean, and a lot of awareness on what STEM is all about, because it's so myopic in their eyes, and they feel it's just about one field. So making them understand engineering could just be you bring in your biology knowledge, you bring in your math knowledge, just put it together, and we want to solve this problem. So a whole really wild aspects that we really need to, help them understand. And also, if we can do more of the collaboration with the companies, let them go take field trips.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, this hydraulic knowledge, this is what it could be used to do. And then that kind of
Right.
really helps them, ground that knowledge, and then they appreciate what they're studying.
So we saw that in a really impactful way. We partnered with Microsoft
Oh,
for
good.
some of our coding projects.
Okay.
And we took all the girls from our pilot program, I think 2 weeks ago now, to the Microsoft Technology Center in Reston. And they spent a whole morning there. And they got to play with they shot asteroids with their eyes in the system, which was amazing to them. We did 3D printing, the kind of facial neck recognition software predicted their ages, which is very fun for them. But then we had a whole conversation with developers who came downstairs and said, I do this. What you
Right.
played with today, I made.
Okay.
And here's what a day looks like. And here's how I kind of put that together. And both parents and participants came to that, and
Oh,
the
nice.
impact was huge. So I think the biggest thing that Microsoft was happy about is that everybody walked away thinking Bing was better than Google, which there was a lot of interesting things I didn't know about before. But so that was their win. But they all walked away really kind of excited about what they had done,
Right.
and with the knowledge of, hey, I could go work for Microsoft
Yeah.
if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Which I think they found really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've also seen a lot of intersectionality in fields that we wouldn't usually have imagined that people would put together. For example, we had this girl talk about wanting to mix neurology with computer science, and she wasn't sure how to do that, and we were thinking, well, there's plenty of research out there that's been done, and if there's a third field that you want to introduce and there's not that intersection that already exists, you can just go and create it yourself. And it blew their minds to think that, wow, I could actually be a pioneer in this new field and really make an impact where it hasn't been made before.
And Girls Who Code does the dropping them into the business beautifully. I mean, they do intensive projects in a
Right.
company for, is it 6 weeks there? What are your summer programs like, your intensive, I don't know.
7
something.
weeks.
7 weeks,
Yeah,
okay.
7 weeks of training.
And they get that at that high school level, which is phenomenal. But yeah, I think more of that is hugely impactful because it's tangible,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
They can relate to it. There's somebody that can, they always say, and there's exceptions to this because there are women in the STEM fields where there may not have been a majority representation for a long time, but you can't be what you can't see. Whereas when you're exposed to it and you've talked to somebody who's navigated this world, particularly if they're a woman, but male mentors are just as important in these conversation spaces. That's huge. There's they go ahead and dream of being a mechanical engineer as a kid. Dress up as one and pretend that's what you're doing when you're in that play space. My daughter walks around as an astronaut. That's kind of one of the ones that we all know about that we can touch with. But the ones that we don't know about are still things that you can be a scientist and play with baking soda in your home at your home, and whatever the kind of narratives behind that. I think that having the exposure is so important.
Yeah, I think ultimately also, the exposure, the collaboration will then, reignite the motivation in them. So when those challenges come, those situations come, they're so motivated that it keeps them even going. They know, oh, this thing, I'll solve it.
Right.
It was something I will handle, and I'll have other bigger tasks. So the motivation is something they could actually get from a younger age, and then when they're transiting into high school, into other stages, other higher levels of education, they're not easily detached from, oh, I think I'm not too good, I want to fall out from the STEM field, maybe it's not my thing anyway. But so when we started off very early, they personally have that confidence in themselves and what they can do, and takes them all the way up and remain in the STEM field.
Right.
I think that's the ultimate thing, because I've had classes where I've had very fantastic classmates, and then they end up saying, I think I want to go into the banking. I'm tired of math. I'm like, no, you've done this far. I don't believe you want to step out at this time. So I think the motivation keeps, going ahead, because sometimes you feel I'm an engineer, I'm good at this, but there are some other skill sets I need. I need to be able to speak to people. I need to be able to convince people of my idea, or I want to build this thing. However, you will tell me, oh, I'm a doctor. I don't think that's necessary, but I should be able to convince you. So everything kind of works hand in hand. everything has to, the skill sets, the motivation they need from the early age. So I think you guys are really doing a great job with the after school and then the summer programs as well. Yeah, with the impact you have with the Microsoft, that sounds very exciting. I could imagine the
thank you.
faces.
They were loving it. I mean, getting to shoot asteroids with your eyes is very cool. I mean, the one thing I kept buying for was like, can I please play with HoloLens? And I knew it was in the building, but it was not ready for testing. I was like, let me play with it, please. I really want to play with it. but I mean, I think also too is people talking about their own journeys and talking about the difficulties that they had along the way and how they overcame them, or what they thought that they ran into. I mean, I was asking you before we kind of started recording this was, what was your journey into STEM? I mean, both of you have your own journeys. I mean, did you, like, from firsthand experience, what did you see as the leaky points that, like, you had to overcome to get there?
Right. I mean, initially, I had the opportunity to take computer science in high school, and I chose not to because I was mostly interested in foreign languages at the time, but I feel like there was also that stereotype in my mind at the time. I had no idea what computer science actually was. So I was thinking, well, I could either go into something that I already know, or I could try to discover this, and I might or might not do well, and it might or might not affect my college applications. So I opted not to, and looking back, I really wish I had, and I wish that there were programs after school that I could have taken and really seen what it was, that you really could do anything that you wanted. So at this point, I'm just trying to let anyone that is vaguely interested try it. But that was
That's a really
languages,
interesting
though,
point.
too.
I like the interesting point of you weren't sure you wanted to take it because of how it might affect your grades. And that's one of the nice things about the out-of-school programs,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we have like just hilarious things. Girls that, class ends and we're supposed to go home, their mom's here to pick them up. They're like, no, I have to finish this. I have to stay and work on it. It's like, no, really you don't. You're not getting a grade, and there's no boss that's waiting for this deliverable, and it's all for fun. You're doing this and having fun, and and it's just, I think it's probably a better experience, right? Because some of the pressure is off.
Oh,
They don't have to
absolutely.
worry about a grade.
Yeah.
They think back and it's like, you're right, I am just having fun. So I can make as many mistakes as I want. Nobody's going to grade me.
Yeah, it's that
Exactly.
safe fail space.
Right.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And I'm making so many more mistakes now that I'm taking basically all computer science classes now. And like I said earlier, I build something just to test it out, and then I build it for real for the project that I'm turning in or
Right.
whatever. And I'm still able to pull good grades, but I've been able to get over that hump. And I'm trying to think of exactly what it was that got me through that initially, because at first I was petrified of thinking, well, I could take this class, and if I fail, then that'll just
Yeah,
bleed
you should
into
come
everything
talk to one of our
else.
camps. I'd love to have you. No, because one of the things,
Yeah.
so I've heard this from the girls, the elementary school girls that take our classes and stuff, is some of them sign up for the same class again. And I've asked their parents, like, why is she taking this class again? It's like, well, she has projects that she wants, but she also likes the instructors. So our instructors are,
Yeah, critical.
college women who are computer science or teachers. And, in the classes, they talk to them, about, well, it's okay to fail. I just today was writing a program, and they tell the same type stories you're telling to these girls. And it's, it's a mentor, it's a role model, it's somebody they look up to. It's a critical piece of all of that. It's having the
Exactly.
right, and I think it helps that they're much closer in age, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Elementary to college is a lot closer than, elementary school to, an adult or a mom or somebody that's teaching them. So
Yeah.
I think it really, I think that's a contribution that's really important in this whole thing is, again, engaging girls that are young, but getting girls that are, not yet, adults and moms and things like that to come in and help.
Yeah, especially if you can get so one of the things that we're moving along the pipeline, our core kind of programs themselves are 4 to 14, but we're working with an internship program with high school students to say, come in and develop a project, and then come in and teach the project or work on teaching the project. And it is that closeness at age factor. There's I'm not cool, anymore. I think I'm cool, but I'm much older than the girls in the class, and we have a great time, and that's fantastic. But the high school girl who gets to come in and say, yeah, I am doing AP computer science,
Yeah, we're doing
and
the
I'm loving
same
it.
thing, which is, and it happened by accident, really. It wasn't, I wish I could say we thought to do this, but we had a girl that took the class, right? And then she moved on to middle school, and she reached back out and said, after we get out of middle school before the elementary school comes out, could I come back and help teach the class to the middle schoolers.
Well, I love her already.
And she was a rock star, right? And then she walks in and she's a 6th grader. And all these, it's her elementary school, so all the kids know her, right? And she comes in and she's helping teach the class. Well, just this year we had this group that were 5th graders last year that have kind of gone through this program, and they've been now coding with us for a couple of years. They're all moving on to 6th grade. And so I'm reaching out to them and saying, if any one of you want to come back and teach, I can't have them all show up on the same day. But it was her idea, and we just want to build on that, right? How cool is it that a middle school girl is going to come back and help teach elementary school kids? She looks like a rock star. They all look up to her, and she's had the real world experience.
Yeah, and when you're talking about the college application space too, is part with the pipeline is college admissions is a totally different world than it was certainly even when I went to college. And being able to tell the narrative beyond the grades is so important
Right.
as well. So having that opportunity to come in and say, yeah, I taught this because I have a passion for it, and this is how I kind of reinforce that, is also really valuable
Right.
in terms of the actual kind of tick box process of actually getting into a STEM field nowadays as well.
Right. Well, the other thing about it too is that, there's this new, I don't know if you're reading about all the things about grit, right? And they're saying that a lot of the college applications now, they're not looking for students that have done 100 things, but that they've done 4 or 5 things that they've done consistently, and so for these girls that start in 3rd grade and then they move to middle school and they may take more classes, but they come back and teach. What a great story, right? Then I get to high school and it's like college application to come do computer science at whatever your school of choice is, and you've been doing this since 3rd grade. I think you're interested,
Completely.